Claudia Filos with the Center for Islamic Studies, and I'm joined today by Gregory Nagy and Keith Stone, who are going to help us think about some of the comments and questions in the HeroesX discussion board. Thanks for joining us, Greg and Keith.
Nice to be here.
It's a pleasure, as always.
Great, so let's just get started right away. This week our participants were thinking, many of them were thinking about hours 7 and 8, and we proposed some new discussion questions, Greg, and I was hoping you would help us think through some of the responses and new ideas that we can create from the discussion developing in the hour 7 discussion thread. So I think what I'd like to do first is maybe pull that up and just read the question, which is, by the time we reach Iliad 23, we've learned a great deal about the greatest hero of this epic, Achilles. Does the picturing of Achilles in Iliad 23 change your views about him in any significant way? So Keith, you and I have had a chance to discuss this a little bit, and actually, Greg, you were in on this pre-conversation too about some of the responses that we've seen. And I think one of the things that has been very encouraging is that I feel like the discussion so far on the thread signals to me that community members, that the understanding of what a hero is has really developed within the community.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Very much so. I love to see the kind of evolution of thought. I wouldn't even call it progress. It's more than that. It's thinking getting more complex and seeing more of the angles, because there are a lot of angles that are at work here. And I can just tell that people are following the plot. They're following the development of characters through the plot. And certainly in 23, we see sides of Achilles that we hadn't seen before, or not as clearly.
So on the one hand, I feel like people are seeing the extremity of the hero because of the treatment of Hector. On the other hand, they're seeing a different side of Achilles in terms of his interactions with the community during the funeral games for Patroclus, and also just the expression of grief that he has for his friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the first time that a modern reader can really understand that Achilles doesn't just grieve for himself, which is what bothers, I think, many of us today. He grieves also for his best friend, and it seems to me that we moderns can relate to that much better. Then we can't say that, oh, Achilles is sulking in his tent, or various other ways we trap ourselves into treating Achilles too narrowly. Here we see his compassion, but the compassion has another side, which is, let's call it passion. It's red-hot anger against the people who have caused the new pain, and that red-hot anger leads to new levels of brutality that defy our imagination. They're even worse than what we've seen already on the battlefield. His mutilation of the corpse of Hector is supposed to be a shocker. There is no way to justify that morally. And the Homeric reception, that is to say, how society reacts to this, should be one of shock and awe.
Right. Keith, can I ask you a question? Because I know that you've had experience working with students for many years on this content. So I feel like the way that we're seeing the horror of these moments, I mean, that's something that's going to come through even more clearly, I think, when we get to tragedy, right? That a hero has done this sort of foundational horrific act. There's some horrific act that has taken place within the myth. And so, Greg, you talk about how the hero is going to, what do we say? They're going to really blow it big time in myth.
Yes.
But then in the ritual that surrounds the myth, in the here and now of the Athens audience, then we're going to get it right? So this polluting action that takes place during the funeral games is so important. So Keith, I mean, do you feel like this is the beginning of understanding that trajectory?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I think Greg has already alluded to this fact, but here the epic really kind of hits you in the face with how bad Achilles is. Before it's kind of like, oh, he's a little selfish, or he's really selfish, he's letting his friends die, or like something like this,
Mm.
which isn't exactly what's going on, but now you see him breaking a taboo, treating a dead body with this kind of disrespect, wanting to eat Hector, who he's just killed. And we see him doing things. I mean, even if you can excuse that as a kind of, passion-based, getting carried away in the moment and grief and anger and something like that. He does things later once he collects himself that are also quite disturbing to us. He kind of more coolly, in a more cool, collected fashion, kills 12 Trojan princes, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Even Patroclus's dogs. I mean, there's a taboo, I think, for us against doing this. He kills 2 of Patroclus's pets to throw onto the pyre with him. I mean, I think it works for us in different ways to show how unsettling the hero is, how immoral.
Yes.
Greg, can I ask about that? This idea of the pollution that is maybe taking place at this sort of foundational mythic event. I'm saying foundational because I'm thinking about the way that you've written about the things that will happen at these funeral games. Achilles is sort of teaching people about how to worship him in the future, right? So
Yes.
he's polluting his own funeral in some sense.
Oh yes, and what I was fishing for, and many of the people who wrote back gave me different answers I liked anyway, but not what I was fishing for. What I was fishing for is that Achilles behaves like a cult hero in 23. He does not yet behave like a cult hero, or not as directly in earlier parts of the Iliad, but now the even-handedness, for example, that he shows in handling disputes by other Achaeans over prizes is something that you would expect a cult hero to do when you're praying to the cult hero and begging the cult hero to give you a sense of justice. Well, Achilles delivers a lot of justice, a lot of even-handed solutions and formulas in the context of judging or presiding over the athletic festival, which we call the funeral games of Patroclus. So there's that, but on the other hand, because he is the hero that he has so many agenda that extend from the story of his life before he died. He acts like that too, and Keith mentioned the dragging of the corpse of Hector, or the execution of prisoners of war, and the way he does all of these things is shocking. Now, the only way for this kind of shocking to be the only way for this kind of shock to be understood fully is to see the brutality of the hero not only in his life story or her life story, but what happens to unjust people in life when a cult hero gets angry at them and the cult hero's spirit visits them and inflicts horrific punishment sometimes. So it's a moving target. Sometimes the horror is inspired by what depths of brutality a person in his lifetime can reach because of their rage or hatred. But at other times it has to do with what a cult hero could do to you if you're not behaving. So that's what I meant by the question, but in a way I was still very gratified by the answers. So for example, one of our participants talked about the leadership qualities. I thought that was very insightful. I would say it differently. I would say that it's the ability of a cult hero to give moral lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much leadership in life, but leadership in death. Leadership as a cult hero, not as a king like Agamemnon. But it's there. The psychology is there, and people are picking up on it. I think people are starting to understand just how subtle and multiform Achilles is. Yeah, he's supposed to be monolithic in how he handles the challenges, the larger than life challenges of his life. But in other ways, you see more and more the complexity of this character. Our friend Lenny Milner has done such a good job in showing that even in 9, even as early as Rhapsody 9, Achilles is getting so complex that the 3 speeches he gives in response to the 3 ambassadors in Rhapsody 9 all show a different side of him. So there he's already getting very complex. But then in a sense, the complexity takes backstage when we see him work out his rage against Hector and against what he considers the ultimate loss, which is the killing of his other self. But the complexity then reasserts itself, I think, in 23, and that's what I was fishing for. I like the various angles that people chose because it still showed Achilles' complexity. I'm also thinking of our friend Jillian Kiriakou, who talked about the, how shall I say it, the temperament, the heart, the emotions, how do I say it, of this hero, and how moving the demonstration of these emotions can be, even if we have moments of horror in his excessive reaction. Excessive isn't even the word. In his unspeakable reaction to Hector's killing of Patroclus.
Great, that's beautiful. So I think we've covered that pretty well, although I just want to comment that I think the conversation is still developing on that thread. So I hope people maybe continue moving that forward.
Yeah, keep it coming.
I mean, we were talking earlier about Mark Mac 61 and sort of some of the comments that he was making. I see there was just a comment that Heather Baldock has added just 24 minutes ago since our since our first prep meeting for this filming. So I hope people continue posting there. Maybe we can turn.
If I could just add one more thing about that, I love how people are reanalyzing the meaning of the word hero for them, which is relevant because it's a word that we still use. Someone early on, I think, in the responses was talking about how is Achilles heroic and how is he not heroic, and that's a really important discussion because it helps mediate the 2 meanings of the word. I mean, the ancient Greek meaning that we're learning about, the modern one that we have kind of already, because it exists in our cultural world.
Yes, for us, a hero must be flawless, or how shall I say it, must be on a pedestal and must be a model that has to be copied in every way by us inferior humans. And that's certainly not the way the ancient hero was. When an ancient hero makes a mistake, it's an even bigger mistake than anything we can do. And
sure, that doesn't mean they're less heroic. That's part of the definition of a hero, is to make.
It's larger than life. It's being extreme. It's being extreme both in goodness and badness, and being more complex than we are as well.
I mean, some of that goodness or that being put on a pedestal applies to the cult hero, to the hero after death. The hero kind of becomes a an indicator of morality.
Oh,
So it's not
definitely.
completely off.
Not just an indicator, but even an enforcer. And so if we're bad, we can expect to be punished by the spiritual remanifestation of heroes. And later on, as we go into some other sources in this project, we're going to see some of that horrific aspect of cult heroes, and what they can do after they're dead, to us humans, us more ordinary people.
Right. I mean, for me, so much of the discussion we're having now about scroll 23 is really helping me remember to rethink and really focus on those passages we're going to read in a few hours, having to do with the hero protesilaus, right?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
So I hope when we get there, we haven't gotten there yet, but I hope people keep this conversation in mind. They keep scroll 23 in mind when we get to those descriptions of on heroes from the passages on heroes. So that's so helpful. So perhaps now we could turn to a few of the other discussions in the discussion board. So I'm just going to pull that up for a second. So. So Greg, here's one thing I want to mention. We have two participants who are bringing up questions from early hours, from hour 1 and hour 2. And so I was just,
we encourage that. That's very. Oh, I know which one you mean. Like the one where they talk about micro narrative and macro narrative.
Right, exactly. And
never get enough of that. That should be something that we keep thinking about from the get-go, all the way to completion. This is a very important concept, because the micro narrative is not just something that's manipulated by the macro narrative. It can influence the macro narrative just as the macro narrative influences the micro narrative. A story within a story can have its own life.
Exactly. And just as we were talking about, that's the kind of thing that Josh Fox is saying in his thread about that relationship between the two, how at one point the micro narrative can sort of take the leading edge, he says, over the macro narrative. So we do want to encourage that kind of thinking about these topics, both for people who are, let's say, already working through hours 7 and 8, and also we just want to encourage community members who may be just joining the project. We know that we have several hundred people who join every week who are just starting out, and we want to let you know that you should not feel like you're behind, that we want your questions, even if you feel like people are a little bit further ahead than you. Post questions about hour 1, hour 2. Even when other people are hour 23, we are still happy to see those questions.
Absolutely, and the beauty of this is that the medium is so systematic that it helps you along. If you just stay with it and are patient, and sometimes go faster, sometimes go slower, doesn't really matter, and you'll still get an aspect of the system no matter where you are. And the idea is just to keep pushing ahead. And if you're in a good mood, I think that's when you should just go into warp speed and try to read more. And then when you're discouraged, read less and enjoy maybe details that whiz by too fast. So vary the pace. You can afford to do it while we're still on the Iliad.
Right. Okay. So, Greg, another thread that I was hoping we might talk a little bit about was actually posted by Jillian Kiriakou, and she was asking about the sacrifice that Achilles makes of his hair to Patroclus. And so she's trying to understand the symbolism behind that gesture. She's saying, by cutting your hair, are you reducing your strength and thus bringing yourself down to the level of the corpse now lying dead? By placing your hair on the corpse, maybe you suggest closeness to that corpse? Or is it purely a ritual like cutting the hairs from the sacrificial bull? And is it some sign to the gods? And so do you want to talk just for a minute or two about this sacrifice that Achilles makes?
Well, just a little bit. I don't think we need to have an either-or situation here, because there were so many rituals involving cutting of hair in the ancient world But the most obvious one, let me just say this much, is adolescence, where you go from adolescence to adulthood. It doesn't happen in all societies. Like Spartan men don't cut their hair when they reach adolescence and enter adulthood. But most societies have a cutting of hair, and what that symbolizes, and I use the word symbolize guardedly, is a separation of the old self from the new self, and being really dead to something that used to be alive to you. So um, if Achilles puts his hair on the corpse of Patroclus, what's that saying is, part of me just died, and so even if it's not that I'll make it dead and put it on you, and I feel the loss even more. Comparable is the scratching of cheeks by women when they lament, or when they tear their clothes, or perform other acts that damage their cosmos, their being well put together, their cosmetic and cosmic self. Death does that to you. It's such a loss for the living that the living have to reenact that something is being cut off from you. And hair would be one thing, but you see, hair is also something that you do in initiation, because you die to your old self and are, as it were, reborn to the new self. So Jillian has given us lots to think with, but I'm saying there may have to be some sorting out of what ritual action means what, and there may be several ritual actions going on at the same time here, so the complexity has to be watched carefully.
Looking ahead to when else we see hair cutting, we see it in libation bearers. Electra and Orestes recognize each other by the locks of hair they've laid on the tomb. The girls in the Hippolytus are mourning, for the hero Hippolytus. They cut their hair. Maybe even with Socrates, he says, "Don't cut your hair."
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get to that all in due time.
But if you like a sort of reductionist way of distinguishing rituals, is this: you can cut your hair in an initiation that leads to a new phase of life, or you can cut your hair in mourning for somebody that is lost to you. And I can see ways that those two come together, but they don't have to come together.
Sure. I think this is really a helpful response as the community is starting to think about this, both what they've already read and about the things that we're going to read. And I think, Keith, your comment is really helpful because it reminds us that, we have been working. I mean, it feels fast. We're reading through the Iliad. It seems so fast, but really we're spending a long time on these epics, especially in the beginning. But then our reading will actually get lighter, and we're going to speed up. And so we're going to cover so many more texts. And so the things that we're finding now in the Iliad, it's such a great thing to take note of the things that are jumping out at us, and maybe don't decide right away completely what they mean just yet, and then look for more examples as we keep reading, right?
In a way, that's what Keith and I are both saying already.
Exactly.
That as you see more and more examples, you'll see more complexities as well. That doesn't mean that it's going to defeat you, and it'll still be a matter of analyzing systems, but the systems will not all be the same.
Right. And so this is just, it's an opportunity to see the way, a way of reading these rituals, a way of working through it, right? That works not just with hair cutting, but with really so many other things that you may see and wonder about. That really is the process, to look for more and more examples,
Exactly.
look for the complexity of the system. Okay, so maybe we'll move on to another question. We still have a few minutes left. Greg, we do have some community members Neuron has posted a question that is prompting us to think about Achilles' heel. So the myth of Achilles' heel, he's pointing us towards the Wikipedia page. He's also saying that there might be a clue in Iliad 21, where there's a point. Yeah. So can you help us think about Achilles' heel? How do we know about that myth? And how does this help us understand sort of maybe the multiform nature of myth? Or
Sure. Well, if you go beyond Achilles and look for the kinds of myths that cultures around the world have about invulnerability, one thing that's typical is that, sure, water is one way for a mother to ensure the invulnerability of a child, dipping the child into magic water, and then whoops, a part of the child doesn't get completely immersed, and so that'll be the vulnerable point. But look, there's also the myth where the mother dips the child into fire, trying to galvanize the child. And you have similar myths there. In the Greek evidence, the water version is attested relatively late. And for that reason, many professional classicists don't appreciate fully the significance of Achilles' heel. I think it's still there, but I'm not sure whether the Achilles story, as we see it in the Iliad, is based either exclusively on a myth about a mother dipping the child into water, or exclusively on the other side of the myth of dipping the child into fire. Keith was reminding you and me, dear Claudia, when we were discussing this interesting question earlier, that we should look at the Homeric hymn to Demeter, because there you do see that alternative version of trying to immortalize a child or make them invulnerable, and that is dipping them into fire, not water. So anyway,
I forget what you said at that point, Greg. Do we have any attestations of Achilles being dipped into fire specifically, or we just have this comparative evidence of Demophon?
It's just comparative evidence, and there is one Australian professor at University of Sydney who thinks he has proved it even for Achilles as a fire baby, so to speak. But it's still a matter of debate about how to sort these out. I'm just saying that when you know enough about the anthropological background of these myths, you're not surprised to see big variations. One of the best things I ever learned from a beginner was somebody who said to me that in the Iliad, you don't have an Achilles heel, whether it's because the fire didn't reach it or the water didn't reach it. You have a substitute for the Achilles heel, and that's Patroclus himself. That in a sense, for our Iliad, Patroclus is the Achilles heel of Achilles. He is the mortal soft spot, and even the temperament of Achilles, where the temperament of Patroclus, where he will be the kind and gentle version of Achilles at special moments, is again in a way an Achilles heel theme. And the Iliad is like that. Sometimes it goes not for detailed myths about invulnerability, but more generalized myths. And this would be an example, I think. And I'm thinking of the way we use the word Achilles heel today, the weak point, how you get to somebody. Well, that's certainly Patroclus in the Iliad. It's not really the heel. And there are dress rehearsals for what will happen to Achilles, but they usually happen to other people, like Diomedes. Somebody will shoot Diomedes at Diomedes, will hit him in the heel or the ankle. It's not clear, and it looks like a kind of foretaste, a dress rehearsal for what will happen to Achilles outside the Iliad. But let's face it, the Iliad never says anywhere directly that the heel of Achilles is his point of vulnerability. It just doesn't say it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
There may be hints at it, but and you know, our participant talks about possible hints in Rhapsody 21, sure, and I would welcome such ingenious discoveries of illusions, because the Iliad is full of illusions. But I'm saying there's no smoking pistol.
Right. I mean, our conversation is sort of making me think about two things that we've never discussed before. So maybe they're not helpful. Maybe they are. I'm just wondering now. The idea of a baby being dipped in fire. I mean, should we be thinking about a kind of heroic ordeal at that point, or is it that's not even? Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
dipped in water.
Heroic ordeal. Yes, and clearly the message of the ordeal is that something can go wrong, as often happens with rituals involving heroes.
Right.
That what would be perfect for humans is imperfect for heroes.
Right. And then also, I mean, just as we're thinking about Achilles' heel, the traditions, I guess, about heroes do seem to give us several examples where the foot of a hero actually is significant, right? I mean, I'm thinking about Oedipus, I'm thinking about Achilles, I'm thinking about, so there is something in general about the feet of a hero that seems to be tied basically to their heroic abilities. Like I'm thinking, I mean, menos, right? When we think about the word Greek menos, we often hear about it, I think, in your knees, but I think also it has to do with your feet, right, in your hands.
Sure. Yeah, well, there's a big obsession about hands, feet, joints, all those things. Yeah.
And is that an Indo-European thing, do you think?
It's not just Indo-European. It's Indo-European languages have lots of it, but it's something that you can find, shall we say, across the fence in cultures that are not at all historically related even to a Greek culture. So it's very common in myths of the world.
Okay, maybe we can just kind of skip over to a different thread at this point that I think might be an interesting connection. We have another participant who's pointing us towards a special kind of dance, right? And so as we're thinking about the feet of heroes, I mean, they're good not just for ambushing and running and races, but also for dancing, right? I mean, when we think about Achilles as the ideal bridegroom, I would think being a good dancer is part of that.
Oh yes, he's definitely a good dancer. And here, let me go back to Anthropology 101. If you study warrior societies cross-culturally, you will find that there are many situations where there are warrior dances, where the kind of thing that a hero would do in war, a warrior will do in dance as well, reenacting the hero, but also and not just reenacting, but doing what you and I would consider dance or song and dance. And weapon dances are very common, where there's dexterity in wielding a weapon while you dance that transfers easily to the dexterity that you have when you fight in war. But the point is that there's this kind of morphological sense of what you're doing in dance, song and dance, which is a ritual, is analogous, is a counterpart to what you do in war, which is also ritual. And things that we moderns separate are definitely not separated. And one of our participants talked about modern Greek traditions of weapon dances, and there are lots and lots and lots of those, and
Right.
very interesting to study and to think with.
So Laosikil, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, the Puriki, Purikis dance, was a thread that we were talking about as we were preparing for this discussion. And you know, one of the little details in the post that I kind of thought was a neat one was they said, what I found really interesting is the way the heroes hit the ground with their knees, maybe a distant sign of acrobatic hitting the ground, which I thought was kind of a neat thing to think about.
Have you ever seen an old man dance in Greek traditions? Sometimes when they get into a certain position, you say, "Oh my, the old geezer is going to keel over," and that's exactly what you're supposed to think, because look, it's like flirting with losing your balance, but then gaining it, and that's the opa moment, so to speak. So there's so much of machismo for male dancing, and so much exhibiting of beauty and female dancing. There are all these gender assignments, I know, but there they are. In modern reception of ancient Greek dance traditions, women now do a lot of the same kind of dancing that men do. So you can find that on YouTube as well, where women will do warrior dances.
Right. I mean, one of the things I love about the post is she says, "Well, I know how to do this dance, but of course I would never do it in public," right? And so isn't that exactly, like, I just love that sense of I know how to do it, right?
Of course.
I just love that comment of like total awareness of the tradition. Even if you're not the one singing the song, even if you're not the one doing the dance, everyone has it totally hardwired, right?
Oh yes, this is a complementarity that goes deep.
Yeah. Okay, so you know, I see that we've actually gone over time, so we should probably wrap up this session. Even though there's so many fun things to say, do you have some final words?
Yes. Can we go to that nice participant who talked about warfare and techniques of warfare?
Oh yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. We didn't want to get to that, but I went too long on the other one. So let me just pull up the thread quickly. So we wanted to talk about, yes, the logistics of the siege of war, which was just posted 3 hours ago, and through the magic of the internet, we can respond even now.
Well, I really liked it, and in a sense, that's one of the good things about Wolfgang Petersen's direction of the movie Troy. There are a lot of things that I have quarrels with in that film, but they really try to reconstruct what a siege of a city would be like in the second millennium. I don't think they always get it right, but the point I want to make, however, and I'll make it quickly because we are running out of time, is that if you look at all the military strategies and maneuvers that are described in the Iliad, I would humbly say that that you can separate some of them by as many as 1,000 years. So Homeric poetry is, although it's systematic, it blends many stages in the evolution of warfare, even in the look and feel of weapons.
So we could say that some of them are fighting with muskets and some of them are fighting with machine guns.
Machine guns, yes, exactly, and submachine guns, and the whole works. And you have a great deal of chronological stratification. I don't like to use the word stratification because that implies layers that don't communicate with each other. We're talking about phases in the development of warfare, where as the warfare develops, the phases communicate with each other in the poetry. There is no one cross-section. You can say, that is the Homeric fighting technique, because fighting technique keeps moving along, and And sometimes even within the same line, you can have two details that are so different that you'd say, wow, this must have happened 1,000 years before that.
Greg, that is so beautiful. So, maybe at some point in the coming days, if you can point us towards a beautiful sentence or two like that, we can point the community towards that. I think that would be really fun to consider. Okay.
And may I, as a last word, advertise a book that is online at the Center for Hellenic Studies. It's called Homer the Pre-Classic, where I concentrate on reconstructing those phases recorded in Homeric poetry where chariot fighting is at its best. And that is a distinct phase, and it happens in terms of the plot when the Trojans manage to cross the Scamander River from the east where they are to the west and counterattack, and then you have chariot fighting galore on the flat plain of the Scamander Valley, a perfect stage for chariot warfare. One of the best stagings of any narrative about chariot warfare anywhere. And I talk about that for pages and pages and pages in the book Homer the Pre-Classic, available free online.
Yeah.
It's not church because it's not directly relevant to our getting through the Iliad in a creative way, but some people may want to have a detour and read about chariot warfare.
Absolutely. So Homer the Pre-Classic, you can find it on CHS, and we'll add the link in the description to this YouTube channel so people can click right there. Here's the other thing. You have written a great deal about charioteers over the last year at Classical Inquiries, so maybe we can link to some of that as well.
Oh my God. There's so much to say. I could spend the rest of my life on chariot warfare. And then there's Siege of Cities. That's another fun topic. So my compliments to our participant who was starting to delve into that problem.
Raise these discussions. So great. So that conversation is just beginning. I hope we can continue it. Maybe our board of readers will join that discussion. And we have some beautiful hours coming up pretty soon. We're going to be switching to the Odyssey. So I just want to encourage everyone to keep reading. If you're having any concerns, continue to post about them on the discussion board. Feel free to post a question or comment just as small as, I think this line is beautiful, to I'm totally lost, I need help, I'm just not getting it. Anything goes.
And we love to have your comments as participants, whichever direction they're going.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keith and Greg, for joining us. I know it's a busy day, so I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to the next office hours in a week.
All right.
Take care.
Good talking to you.
Thank you, Claudia, for all you do.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Pete.